The night was thick with the southern heat, and the cypress trees around the Ford house stood like sentinels in the dark, their branches groaning as the wind whispered through the Arkansas swamp. A full moon cast a silver sheen over the boggy ground, turning every shadow into a lurking threat. It was May 1st, 1971, a night the Ford family would never forget. Bobby Ford and his wife Elizabeth had just moved into their new rented home on the outskirts of Fouke, Arkansas. It was isolated, too isolated. Crickets chirped nervously, the frogs had gone quiet, and the silence between the sounds felt unnatural. Inside the modest farmhouse, Elizabeth lay on the couch half asleep, while Bobby and his brother Don were out hunting. Suddenly, she heard something, a scraping, and then a heavy, labored breath, and then the screen window behind her bowed inward with a slow creak. She turned, and her breath caught. Two burning eyes, red eyes, stared in at her through the darkness. A massive, hairy hand, gnarled and slick with swamp muck, was reaching through the window, claws brushing the curtain. Elizabeth screamed. Bobby and Don arrived back just in time, burst through the door with rifles raised. They caught only a glimpse of the creature as it slipped into the night, 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, and fast. Too fast for anything that size. They fired shots, but the bullets only rang out, useless, into the trees. Whatever it was, it had vanished. But the nightmare wasn't over. Later the same night, while Bobby stood on the porch, scanning the woods, something exploded from the darkness. It came without sound, without warning, just a shape of fur and eyes and rage. The thing grabbed him. Bobby said later that he never saw its face. He only felt its weight, its putrid stench like rotting meat and stagnant water. The creature's arm locked around his shoulder, and for a moment, Bobby felt like he had been swallowed by the swamp itself. He thrashed and fought, breaking free, barely, and ran for the house. In his panic, he didn't bother to open the front door. He crashed through it with his full weight, splintering the door frame. He collapsed inside, bloodied and wild-eyed, gasping for breath and speaking in broken fragments. His skin was scratched, his body trembling with shock. That night, he was rushed to the hospital, not for his wounds, but for the terror that had gripped his mind. Investigators found deep claw marks in the siding, 3-toed tracks, giant, unnatural, and littered the yard and the porch. Something has been there. And whatever it wasn't done hunting the woods of Arkansas.
Deep within the mist-laden swamps of southern Arkansas, a legend stirs. A creature that has haunted the imaginations of locals and cryptid enthusiasts alike. This is Pucker, searching for truth, the Fouke Monster. The Fouke Monster. The Fouke Monster, also known as the Boggy Creek Monster, first gained widespread attention in the early 1970s. However, reports of a large, hairy, bipedal creature in the area date back to the 1940s, with some accounts even earlier. On May 2nd, 1971, the Ford family reported a terrifying encounter near Fouke. Elizabeth Ford claimed a hairy creature reached through her window, prompting her husband and brother to chase it away. Despite firing shots, no blood was found, but mysterious footprints and scratch marks were left behind. The incident sparked a media frenzy, leading to numerous reported sightings and even a bounty for the creature's capture. In 1972, filmmaker Charles B. Pierce released The Legend of Boggy Creek, a docudrama blending real interviews with dramatizations of the Fouke Monster encounters. The film grossed over $20 million, becoming a cult classic and cementing the creature's place in American folklore. The Fouke Monster's legend endures, inspiring festivals, books, and documentaries. The annual Fouke Monster Festival celebrates the creature's lore, drawing enthusiasts from around the country. Whether a figment of imagination, a misidentified animal, or something else entirely, the Fouke Monster remains a mystery. Its story continues to captivate, reminding us of the thin line between myth and reality. We are amateurs in the sphere of paranormal, cryptid, and UFO investigations. What started as a love for stories of the unknown, over the years, sparked a willingness and a prerogative to investigate on our own accord to prove or disprove to ourselves what we believe. We continue to learn and research, but know that we are still ignorant to many details and information surrounding these anomalies. In no way do we believe that we are experts, nor claim to be professionals. Given that we are still new, we had some issues with our equipment. Due to this, our audio did not record throughout our first investigation. Under the circumstances, we decided to present the footage in a narrative form and want to show the visuals of our findings anyway. We are blue-collared, middle-class regular Joes, attempting to make sense of the insensible. Following footage is a glimpse into our experience. What we found, to us, warrants further investigation and, as critics, gives the voices of believers more tangible credit to their stories. We agreed amongst ourselves to always be impartial and realistic about our expectations, our findings, and our results. The Fouke Monster is described to be around 7 feet tall. Some reports say it has bright red or yellow eyes that pierce through the darkness of night. Long dark hair, reddish brown to black. It is reported to emit a foul stench, much like that of a skunk, but worse. Unlike other Bigfoot prints, the Fouke Monster is supposed to have 3 toes, as opposed to the typical 5. It moves slowly, with a lumbering gait. But do not make the mistake of thinking it is always slow. When in times of need, it can move with incredible speed and mobility. Eerily married with the silence of the bog, it resonates very little, if any, sound despite its movements across the forest floor. Few people have been lucky or unlucky enough to have laid eyes upon this creature, but all of those who have been in the presence of it describe the feeling as haunting, visceral, and deeply terrifying. These feelings would become all too familiar to us the instant we stepped out of our truck and entered the bog. We arrived around midday, only giving us a handful of hours to gain our bearings. We wasted no time getting our gear together and starting our preliminary investigation. Sid mentioned to me that he was feeling a little uneasy and on edge. I told him that I was happy he said that because I felt the exact same way. It was clear, whether the monster of Boggy Creek was with us or not, that the forested swamp was unwelcoming, and that we were unwanted guests. The tension was palpable and the air thick, but these feelings were dwarfed by the excitement of exploration and discovery. So we moved into the thicket to begin our journey. We moved slowly, but with purpose, scanning left and right. The forest allowed us a fortunate amount of visibility. The general foliage of the swamp had not yet grown in for the year, and because it was still relatively cool outside, bug populations were still pretty low. Sid was especially grateful for that. Hours passed as we trekked through, but no audio or visual signs had presented themselves thus far, but evidence of active wildlife was abundantly clear. Most of the ground was rather dry and littered with leaves and plant debris, making it almost impossible to find any potential footprints. We decided to reference our map and head towards the river to hopefully gain a lead. Anything would do. Clouds rolled in, masking the sunlight, and slowly the fall of raindrops started to dampen us and soak into the ground.
Alright, so the rain's picking up. Our camera battery just died while we were out. I'm not going to switch out to the full charge battery in the rain. But we stopped here because we just started smelling a little bit of a skunk smell. And again, it's starting to pick up.
Off and on the rain came. I brought my rain poncho in my pack, and I used it to cover myself and, more importantly, our electronics.
Alright, so the rain picked up pretty darn heavy. We lost the skunk smell trail. We were trying to follow it, see if we could see where it was leading us to, but nothing came about. I'm wearing the poncho to try to protect some of our electronics. Yeah, it must have. Oh, okay. It looked like a building. I definitely saw a bunch of movement. That's why I thought they were cows. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me.
Pig tracks were scattered, but all too prevalent. It was only a few hours in when we stumbled across our first pack of wild boar. If we were here to hunt, this would have been a golden opportunity, but that wasn't the case for this trip. So we kept our distance, changed course, while the rain continued to envelop us. After some more walking and the rain clearing up, the river became visible in the distance. But as we drew near, Sid made a chilling discovery. A bone fragment by itself is rather a common occurrence in places like this. Two could mean an animal may have eaten a meal in this location. But Sid didn't see just one or two. We were walking through a field with dozens of bones, most notably skulls. It was clear to us that these skulls were from a variety of animal species. Many of these skulls were crushed or broken towards the front. Sure, bones typically degrade and break in the thinner, more brittle areas first, but the consistency of the breaks and the noticeably large amount of skulls was enough to put us on edge. Was this the location some of the locals used to discard of their hunting byproducts? Or could this be some sort of feeding ground for the Fouke Monster? Neither of us could say for sure, or find a concrete explanation. It was just enough to unnerve us, and with that, the exploration for the day had ended. And with the sun setting, we had limited time to return to the truck and deliberate our findings. Once back at camp, we unloaded the gear we brought with us, and I started a fire to cook hot dogs over. We took a minute to relax, eat, and discuss what we found, as well as our next venture out into the woods. Actually being out in these woods was very sobering. I know I can speak for both of us when I say we definitely gained a new respect, not only for the stories and the people with previous sightings, but also for the bog itself. Being out in the wilderness, conducting an investigation, is totally different from the feelings you may have while watching TV or a video on the internet. First-hand account of the location may not sway a stubborn critic to the belief of cryptids or monsters, but the tiniest possibility of being wrong can send a cold chill down the spine of even the most stalwart of non-believers. We knew that there were wild boar, coyotes, a variety of venomous snakes and spiders, bears, and even alligators in the darkness before us. Knowing the potentially dangerous conditions we may run into, we agreed to stay on the path and not wander off the trail at night. It seemed too big of a risk with what little visibility we would have. If something were to happen to either of us, we were not confident that we would be able to provide the necessary aid required or get emergency services down to where we were in any meaningful span of time. It was just us and the forest, which seemed to be living and breathing, and didn't want us there. Though the insects were not so prevalent that they became an unbearable nuisance, they were still very active. Swatting winged bugs and reapplying bug spray was standard. The hum of chattering and chirping insects was continuous. So much so that one may seat the noises in the back of their psyche as background noise. When investigating, your ears strain for the snapping of branches under footsteps or the low growl that may come from a predator. But the ever-persistent insects fall into the normal symphony of the wetlands. That is, until you realize the swarm has ceased its hymn and the echo of silence surrounds you. This froze us dead in our tracks and demanded full attention to scanning the trees around us when it happened. The insects had not seemed to be disturbed by our presence in any capacity other than the occasional mosquito looking for a meal, so whatever presence had made them go immediately silent had us on our toes, ready for anything. Some of the locals warned us. If the bugs go silent, we could very well be close to the monster itself. This was one more log thrown into the fire of uneasiness we felt in our stomachs. Still, we pressed forward, anticipating glowing eyes peering down at us from behind a tree, or the snarl of an angry beast who was tired of the trespassers in his territory. Though we stuck to the path, the moisture on the ground and the blackness of night hindered our ability to move quickly, so covering ground was a little more difficult than we had hoped, but not impossible. We had self-defense tools in the case of emergency, which granted us, at the least, a thin veil of ease that we could protect ourselves. Still, the cool air of the night whispered thoughts of horrors into the backs of our minds. A few hours passed, and what seemed to be a rather uneventful walk swiftly turned into a moment of disbelief and shock. Every hair on the back of my neck stood on end. While painting the woods with my flashlight, I caught a glimpse of a shimmer. Then two. I immediately knew what I was looking at. Eyes. Were these the eyes I had been searching for? Was this the beast of legend? Thoughts of terrors to come flooded my mind. Eyes stood only a few feet off the ground and were watching me, unwavering. After a moment, they ducked and dipped behind a tree, only to re-emerge on the other side, taking their gaze off of me for only a second. That's when I noticed more and more sets of eyes. At least half a dozen pairs of eyes were now locked on us. A pack of coyotes stood in the distance, but too close for our comfort. We were on unfamiliar land and thought it best to turn back and call it in for the night. After unloading our gear once more, we settled into the truck and listened to the light sprinkle of rain hitting the windshield, serenading us to sleep. But hardly any sleep was to be had. The next morning was crisp. The cool morning breeze was a welcome change to the stuffy cab of the truck. Sid especially had a difficult sleep, as he hadn't forgotten any gear except his blanket. After cooking up a quick breakfast of bacon and eggs on the portable propane stove, we geared up for another round of investigation. Now that we had familiarized ourselves with the area, we were confident in the locations we believed could hold the evidence we were looking for. We specifically wanted to look around the river some more. The bank of the river was an obvious animal highway with prints from various animal species. If we were going to find a footprint, this is where it would be. Deer, boar, and coyote prints littered the soggy bank of the river, and after a short time of walking up the riverside, we noticed something that piqued our interest. Something large walked along the side of the water, but due to the abundance of leaves and sticks, coupled with how malleable the watery mud was, it was difficult to place exactly the shape of the prints. We followed them for a few hundred yards, occasionally getting excited at the prospect of finding a real print, and then it happened. Sid rounded a small bend in the river, and on the side of this tree, he spotted it, an almost perfect footprint stuck there in the mud. 3 prominent toes stuck out in the mud print from an elongated foot base. It was easy to tell when the heel and the ball of the print, reminiscent of a human foot, pressed into the soil. The angle that the foot had been placed, coupled with the softness of the ground, clearly showed us how the toes spread in the mud under the weight of the beast. This was it. This is what we were looking for. Adrenaline, disbelief, and a sense of validation flooded through both of us. Our excitement was unfiltered and burst out of us as if we were given the perfect Christmas present. We knew we had to cast this print to keep in our records. The walk back to the truck was brief. We grabbed the casting material we had bought from the hobby store, a bottle of water, and a Whataburger cup to mix in. Once back at the site of the print, we made sure to take some pictures and measurements. Unfortunately, the amount of material we had was only about half as much as we needed to fill the print properly. The leaf litter, sticks, and mud also did us no favors, but still we had to try. After setting the cast, it had to sit for a few hours, so, back at the truck, I started another fire and we relaxed, the thrill of discovery coursing through our veins. This was an eventful investigation. We had come face to face with venomous snakes, a pack of coyotes, 2 packs of boar, and we even watched a fishing boat kick up an alligator in the river. We felt accomplished, victorious. Some may think the track we found was fabricated. Some may say it's not the track of a cryptid creature, but an amalgamation of other animal tracks conveniently atop one another, resembling that of a Bigfoot track. But to us, even myself as a critic, there is little doubt of the origin of this track. We truly did stumble across this track by coincidence. We found multiple tracks along the river with a gait hardly replicable with human steps. It was easily the most prominent. I racked my brain trying to find a logical explanation for how this print came to be with natural forces. I could think of nothing, and no explanation made sense. We have shared our findings with many people. Some are on the fence whether or not it is a legitimate track. Some deny it, claiming it is merely confirmation bias. But most people, including scholars and experts, told us there is no doubt in their mind we found a legitimate track. This video is not meant to be proof of the Fouke Monster. It is not meant to sway the masses in believing the stories of the elusive creature. This is, in essence, our testimony with which each individual watching can surmise their own opinion. Frankly, we know this won't convince most people. But for those of you who do believe, know that you are not alone. The evidence is out there, and the burden of proof lies with the naysayers and non-believers. For decades, stories like these have littered the media. Pictures have been taken, sounds have been recorded, and tracks have been cast. Some have been debunked, and plenty discredit can be found in the community. But a plethora of real, substantial evidence can be found if one goes looking. Once darkness swept through the bog, we returned to our cast. The debris the cast was laid on had formed and contorted our material. Between the lack of material and messy substrate, the cast is likened to a suggestion of the track from which we pulled it. Still, We are proud to have this physical evidence and believe it represents our journey well. Our long-awaited adventure had come to an end. Questions remain, and we believe more evidence is out there, waiting to be found. Further investigation is necessary, and we look forward to returning to Fouke, Arkansas. If you made it to the end of our story, I want to personally thank you for tuning in. This is a passion project that's been in the works for a while now, and we are proud to share. We plan on returning to Fouke in the next year or so, as well as we plan on conducting several other investigations yet to be announced. We also want to give a huge shout out to the workers at Monster Mart and all the people we talked to in town along the way. Your generosity and support means the world, and if any of you watching ever pass through Fouke, make sure to check them out. Follow us on Instagram at PUCER, and if you enjoyed this video, drop a like down below. Let us know down in the comments what you make of the track, and we'd love to hear personal encounters with cryptic creatures. This has been Searching for Truth with Fouke Monster. We'll see you in the next one.